Hi, everybody, and welcome back to EBnet.Stream. Trump and his tariffs have certainly dominated our headlines for 2025 thus far. But in reality, as South Africa's biggest trading partner, we should also be staying updated on China. I thought I'd catch up with David Bacher, the Chief Investment Officer at Corion Capital, to hear about his recent trip east. Welcome to EBnet.Stream, David.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Let's start by me sharing that I've always thought of China as a communist country, yet its meteoric financial success seems to contradict this picture of communism I have in my head. Perhaps it's best to start off with your insights on the evolution of China's economy into where they are today.
Sure, I'll try my best. I mean, China has been probably the most famous economic recovery transformation of all time. If you think back, I mean, the reform started in 1978, and just some of the statistics, I think they've taken 800 million people out of the poverty line, and that's the biggest transformation of poor people to wealth in history. So it's been a phenomenal economic story, and it's been driven by reforms which prior to 1978 was inconceivable. So you described the question, what kind of economy is it? And it's a hybrid economy where the government certainly plays a massive role in the direction and still controls many of the key industries and strategic SOEs, but it does allow capitalism to flourish in many areas of the economy, and they do that because they recognize that capitalism does generally result in better delivery, and this hybrid economy has certainly worked. And many people can argue and point to China for other things and the impact on the environment, or maybe it's a one-party state, etc. But when you look at the cold numbers of how many people have actually thrived through their policies in general, it's hard to actually, be too critical of what they've achieved.
I'm glad you mentioned the SOEs. How important are they in China? Is this the kind of communism meets capitalism convergence point?
It is. It's amazing. I think there are 27,000 SOEs in China. I mean, we struggle with the 20. I don't know how much exactly South Africa has, but they've got 27,000. I went to visit on my tour some of them, and it's phenomenal what they are achieving in the greater good of what the party thinks is important. So, you'll play a bigger role at SOEs in terms of telecommunications, infrastructure, railroad, etc. And what they've achieved in some SOEs has been phenomenal. So, obviously, I'm very much in the camp of democracy and a multi-party state, but there are certainly advantages of, if you've got a government knowing what they want to achieve, in how they can implement it through their government state enterprises.
So interesting. If we weave that into the concept of geopolitics, which seems to be the new buzzword in investment markets, where does China fit in with the US, and then where does it fit in with South Africa?
Well, let's start with South Africa. I mean, China is South Africa's largest trading partner. So, we trade with China on a wide range of commodities, including raw materials, manufactured goods, technology. So the bilateral trade relationship is very, very important to South Africa. As I said, it is our largest trading partner, and there's also obviously the political alliance that we have, being a member and a founding member of the BRICS. So China is critically important to South Africa. But having said that, so is the United States. I mean, if China's the largest trading partner, then the United States is probably second. If obviously the EU trading bloc is also very important, and so both parties and both economic blocs are critically important to South Africa. And there's lots of noise is going on where we're aligning ourselves and why we're aligning ourselves with China. Can't really answer that, but what I can say, and what the view is at Corion, is that we should probably adopt a more of the the approach that India has adopted, which is a non-alignment approach. I don't think we can afford, given our economic lack of growth and our need for job creation, to choose partners. So we should be wanting to trade with everyone. So, to answer the question, both the US and China are critical to South Africa, and I think it's unfortunate that it seems to be that we are steering in favor of one bloc at the detriment of another.
To get to more of the fun stuff, what were some of your personal observations about doing business in and with China?
I went there for 2 weeks. I visited, and it's a very vast country, so I maybe just touched the tip of the iceberg, so to speak. But I went to Hong Kong, I went to Shenzhen, I went to Beijing, I went to Macau. So I did quite a lot in 2 weeks, and you go to a place with some preconceived ideas. I wanted to see it firsthand, and on the whole, I was completely blown away by what I saw. I mean, I went there with thoughts about I was going to go to parts of China that I saw lots of pollution, and I've had a much more of a third world kind of mindset when I went there. But what I saw was a very clean cities, and these are the bigger cities. So maybe outside in the more rural areas is a different picture. But for example, Beijing has had one of the biggest improvements in emissions over the last 10 years than any other city. So they are certainly on the road to a cleaner economy. Some of the other observations that I saw was just you hear about the work ethic, but to see it, and we went to go see lots of factories, what was visible, and the respect for seniority and how they appreciate a job and value a job and value the firm that they work for is amazing. So that was a visible take-home point for me. But there were many, many more. It was a fascinating trip. I think that the technology and the industries that we saw there was just another take-home message. Everyone's been talking about Silicon Valley and the technology from the United States, but the technology that we saw in China, it was mind-blowing. So really, it was an exciting trip.
Tell me about the Louis Vuitton bags that you saw.
So that was another preconceived idea. So everyone seems to think that growing up, made in China was a negative thing. You saw the label made in China and it spoke about inferior products and it's going to break. And you also think that wherever you go, there's going to be counterfeit goods like Louis Vuitton bags. I've never seen so many Louis Vuitton shops and high-end shops there. And I didn't see any counterfeit bags. And I think that was just a way that the Chinese economy is actually starting to try and protect patents and copyright and trying to become a lot more commercial in the way they're doing it. And it was visible.
So interesting. And I also saw in one of your slides in the deck that you shared with me was a comment around electric vehicles. I mean, I kind of have this picture in my mind. They're at every street corner. I mean, what does that look like?
So, there was another fascinating take home. We went to see 4 different new energy vehicles, or NEVs, different factories. It was fascinating. So in China, every NEV car has a green number plate. I would say a quarter of the number plates are green. The government is really throwing everything at the automobile industry. It has knock-on effects globally. You can see the way European car manufacturers are trading. Their sales are significantly down. So too South Korea, etc. So I think what they're doing in terms of manufacturing has global ramifications. In fact, I came back from my trip and saying, sure, why not consider a Chinese car? I sold my European car, got for exactly a new price of a Chinese car that I bought. It had probably twice as many features and it was half the price. And you can see how they are really leading this technology, and it's going to have global ramifications for businesses and trade and other companies around the world.
It's just fantastic, and I've seen a lot of the new cars coming out and kind of gone, that's interesting. It's interesting. You can definitely see the increase even on our roads. Perhaps a bit of a sensitive topic, but let's talk censorship. I'm by no means, a conspiracy theorist, but the messaging around COVID was certainly, I'm going to call it sanitized. How does capitalistic growth happen where information isn't free flowing?
I've spoken about a lot of the positives. I would say the censorship, I went in there with expectations and I came back thinking it was actually worse than my expectations. It was actually the one area that I thought, okay, this lived up to my expectations, but actually on the negative side. And you felt it everywhere. You can't go into Google, you can't go into WhatsApp. You're really cut off from the world. I'll share an example of something that I found most fascinating was, we were there as a delegation. One of the members of the delegation at Beijing, which is obviously the heart of power in China. And we were on the streets, and this person asked our tourist, how far we away were all the Beijing massacres happened, and where the uprising was. And you could literally see her face turn white, and she walked away. And he was left like, oh, am I not allowed to say that? But it was just between me and you. And then she got onto the bus and she said, please, you cannot ask me those questions. You don't know who's next to us. You don't know. Those are I can lose my license, etc. So, Big Brother is certainly watching, and, definitely a negative take home. But having said that, I must be careful what I say, because I'm by no means trying to endorse that kind of a political model. But the negatives are certainly there to see, but also on the positives, the lack of having debate and freedom of speech about certain things that they need, that they believe, rightly or wrongly, is in the best interest of China. You can see the benefits of having that kind of lack of debates and freedom of speech. It's not my view, but I'm just trying to see it from their eyes.
Maybe an enforced kind of patriotism type thing.
I think the example is it's a very different example, but is Singapore, and I actually went to go visit their model as well, and that's like a benevolent dictatorship, where I don't know, 75 years ago it was a small fishing village, and what they've achieved, and how they've implemented, it is a democracy there, and it's very, very different, but it's a very strong democracy with very strict laws, and once the government thinks this is the best interest of the city and the country, they do everything to achieve it. So I think that's probably, in my opinion, the much better model. But every model has its pros and cons.
Sure. To sum up then, in kind of 1 minute, your key impressions from your trip.
The biggest take-home message for me, and I was there probably about a year ago, and the whole talk about tariffs and what the implications were going to be for China, and can China cope without America? And I came back thinking, the shoe might be on the other foot here, because the threat of tariffs really sparked so much more innovation and internalization from China that I think it just advanced their technology and their ability to deliver different products. And that you're starting to see globally now. And, tariffs is a two-way street. So, it's a highly political topic, but usually you employ tariffs. It's certainly not going to not impact the United States only.
Thank you, David. Thank you for taking the time to share your experiences with us today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.